welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at MEC Sharks and on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find my work at Halfwall. Shoot. We got this.
Okay,
all right. Okay, hold on.
All right, hold on.
It's been 2 weeks. We got to get back into it, man.
I know. Mushu, no licking. Sorry, my dog, she has a skin allergy, so she like scratches and licks herself a lot. So we tried to stop her. She took advantage of it the second I started recording.
We got this.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at NBC Sharks and on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find my work on Twitter at halfwall_hockey, at my website, half-wallhockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. Welcome back. It's been 2 weeks. We are here, returning with the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. Just a little bit off the top. For this week, our main topic is going to be a little bit of a kind of a deeper dive into Mackenzie Blackwood's play and some of the arguments for keeping or trading Mackenzie Blackwood from the Sharks, given his run of good play in the first few months of the season. But before we get to that, Sheng, why don't you talk a little bit about your break from the podcast?
Sure. We're also going to talk too, Keegan. You were at the Boston game recently, and you said that you were going to take some questions from readers and answer them on the podcast. So we'll get to some of those today. So kind of abbreviated a mailbag, I guess you would call it.
Yeah,
so.
Perfect.
But anyway, yes. So we did miss last week. As I mentioned on Twitter, my father-in-law passed away. I wanted to thank everybody. There were so many well-wishers. I apologize. I couldn't get back to I didn't get back to everybody, but so many of you sent well wishes, be it on Twitter or on the website. And thank you very much. It's was really much appreciated. I read every one of your comments, and I thank you a lot. Really meant a lot to me. And it's been I don't talk about my personal life a lot, and that's not really the place for it. Obviously, this podcast, I'm here to cover the Sharks, but yeah, it's been a pretty tough year, especially for my wife. Obviously, last summer her father-in-law was diagnosed with brain cancer, and even back then it was pretty much a terminal diagnosis. It was very serious at that point. So sort of knew it was coming, but it's been very tough, especially for her over the last year, to see her father just a decline from being a very, very vital, strong person to the end there. And so really actually shout out to her too, because she's been going back and forth between Taiwan and San Francisco, back and forth for the last year. I think she has made, I don't know, 12 trips back and forth. And because she works here too. She can work from home too. So that helped. But anyway, just credit to her for her strength through all this, through a very difficult time. Thank you everybody for your well wishes, and let's talk some hockey.
Yeah, it's a good segue. Very sorry for your loss, Sheng. It was
thank you.
Sitting here at the desk alone for a week, waiting for you to come back. No, I was. I rest assured everybody that Sheng was still trying to find a way to get an episode in for you guys, but I think it was good that you had some time to take and reflect. So let's get into some of the kind of, like, I guess, news since we've been away. Overall, Sharks are better. That's like the big news. Sharks are kind of better. They were really, really, really bad for a month and a half there, and then ever since the past like 2-3 weeks, they're 4-5-1 in their last 10, and they're 6-6-1 in their last, what is that?
Sterling 500, yeah.
That's a 500 team if you count the 10 losses in a row or 11 losses in a row. At the beginning of the season. But yeah, they are significantly improved. There are obviously still some clunker games where the Sharks are just flat and they don't come out with any energy.
And don't look at the shot
happen.
differential for any of these games.
Any of them, basically. They are heavily outshot every single time.
They've outshot a team once this year.
Wow, is it the stat? Oh my gosh. That's appalling. Anyway, they're better. So
they are better.
Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you think has changed in the past couple of weeks to make the team better, other than that one kind of basically thing that Grier did where he came out and called the team out? What do you think else has changed?
Well, yeah, I missed the Vancouver game, of course, and like I mentioned, I don't like to talk about my personal life much, but I thought it was important to let everybody out there know, all the listeners and readers, and thank you again for your support through all this, to let them know that I was going to take a night off, and why, because you guys
100%.
put a lot of trust in me to give you the best possible coverage, and I take that responsibility to the max, I guess. That's a very important responsibility to me, and so I wanted to let you know why. But anyway, I came back. I missed the Vancouver game, which of course naturally I missed the best game of the Sharks season, probably most exciting game of the Sharks season. Well, short of, I guess, maybe the New Jersey game yesterday.
Yes.
But anyway, I came back for the that was Washington, and I think I commented after the first period, the Sharks fans were actually cheering, were actually applauding the Sharks for their play after the first period. And what happened? What happened when I was gone?
Yeah, they were a different team.
Yeah, different team. So essentially, I think, and I just wrote an article about this, sort of 5 reasons why the Sharks play is better. And I think a couple of the key reasons, obviously, we're going to talk about one of them, Mackenzie Blackwood, and also Kaapo Kähkönen. The goaltending has been a strength, the one strength of the Sharks all season, and it's continued to be a strength. But also, too, I want to give a quick shout out to guys. We talked about guys last week that or a couple weeks ago in our last episode, guys that were counted out, guys were counted out too fast from small sample sizes. Mike Hoffman, Luke Cunnin. We didn't mention Mikael Granlund. Granlund got off to a really slow start, but we're seeing, especially the last 4 games or so, the Granlund that you and I think both thought that we would get this season. I think we had them as going a solid 50-point season, good bounce back season for him, because he did have a rough year last year. But he is showing very still looking for maybe more consistency, but this has been the best consistent stretch of play that he's had as a Shark. And if he sustains what he's done over the last 5 games, Sharks are going to be just fine with him over the next a couple of years. And so I think obviously a couple of those guys stand out. Duclair last night, Duclair was coming off an 8-game slump. And so so credit to him. And so maybe to some degree, this was sort of, there are a lot of questions, a lot of fair questions about Mike Grier's vision for this team when they started off 0-10-1. A lot of fair questions about, I think, David Quinn's job security too. I talked with a few scouts back then. The common theme was, what is this team? What is this roster construction? There's no power play quarterback. You have Kyle Burrows running your power play. All kinds of question marks, right? And they were, I think, fair questions, because not only were the Sharks losing, but they were getting throttled, minus 42 goal differential in their first 11 games. But I think overall, we're starting to see a lot of what Mike was hoping for. And again, I don't think Mike was trying to build a playoff team. If that so happened, of course, I think they'd be happy, but I don't think that's what they were trying to build. They're just trying to build something competitive. And you're starting to see the pieces of it, that Mike Hoffman still has that shot that that a top 6 caliber shot. I think you would hope that he shoots more, but when he gets it off, though, he can still fire away. And so he had a nice little run there. I think 6 goals in 6 games. Duclair, we're seeing up and down play. Obviously, he had strep throat too that knocked him out for a few games. And he lost a lot of weight. But if the Duclair we saw yesterday against the Devils, if we see a lot more of that, then that's going to be a great trade. And obviously Granlund showing that kind of two-way caliber game. And from the beginning of the season, Blackwood has been incredible. And so I think we're starting to see sort of the shape of the team that Grier was hoping for. And with better players, David Quinn has more to work with, and we're seeing the results on the ice. Also, I do want to do a quick shout out to all the young defensemen that that Mike Grier has kept adding, like the the stones of the Affinity Gauntlet, or the Affinity Glove.
Yeah.
They've been decent. Again, no one is reminding you of, I don't know, Mark-Edward Vlasic, circa 19-year-old Mark-Edward Vlasic,
No.
or whatever, right? But Hotiak's been solid. Eberson's been solid. Addison, who we'll talk about later, that's a player that Keegan was asked about his observations of Addison at the Boston game. But anyway, Addison, all those three guys have been pretty good contributors, and so I think, again, we're seeing kind of the shape of it. Good veterans, youngsters who deserve to be up here and aren't being totally outclassed. A good line for these youngsters of, they're obviously still learning and they're not great up here. And that means Eklund too. And obviously Emerson, Hotiak, I mentioned all those guys, right? They're not phenomenal up here. They're not going to be winning a Calder Trophy or all rookie team, or at least at this point, or any of those kind of things, right? And some of them may not be eligible anymore too. I know that too. But the overall point is that they are great up here, not yet, but they're at least showing enough good that they don't belong in the minors, and that's Emerson, Ahotiak, Eklund, and all those guys. And so it's a good blend of vets who should be here, NHL caliber, maybe not NHL stars, but NHL caliber, and youngsters who are NHL caliber.
It's coming together in some sort of strange way that I think Mike Grier only could see. And we'll talk a little bit about the kind of the Infinity Gauntlet of defensemen. Speaking of one stone that has been removed from this gauntlet recently, but I am not wearing a Sharks jersey this week. Not because specifically that I'm mad at the Sharks or that I'm not happy.
They're really threatening that Macklin Celebrini pick, huh?
Number one,
you got to cut it out with this good play.
Gotta stop it, because we still need to keep our eyes on the prize of last place in the NHL. No, it's because I went to the Boston game. I had a great time. It was a fantastic game. I love going to Sharks games away. I don't know. I've been to a bunch of different places watching the Sharks because I live on the East Coast, so it's not like I get to see the Sharks on the West Coast all the time. And they laid an egg. They laid a huge egg. They were bad in that game, and that's so I'm gonna not wear a jersey, but I do have a hat. I do have a Sharks theme.
You're just cold right now. That's all. You're not wearing it because of your love for the Sharks. You're just cold.
It is cold. And also, I look absolutely ridiculous with it on, with these headphones on. It looks like, so.
You look like you should be in the Sharks holiday sweater video right now. So.
Yeah, it's awful. I'm not going to keep this on the whole time because it's something else. But I have been wearing this the entire week pretty much because it is freezing here. But yeah, I'm not wearing a jersey this week. How cold is it there? It's like in the 40s or something like that.
Well, it's not that bad. That's not bad for Rhode Island. I can say you're in Rhode Island, right? So yeah,
it's not terrible. Well, Rhode Island actually doesn't get as cold as like New Hampshire and all that stuff. But
okay.
But because we're like right by the ocean. Anyway, I'm just not wearing a jersey. Next week, if they continue their good play. And also, like, every game I got to actually watch without having to go to like replay or whatever, they lost. They were bad. So it's just because of my work schedule. So
you're just personally mad.
It's only me mad. I'm not. Okay. It's not like a. Yeah. And that's the way the jersey pick
because
goes.
As someone who had to sit through the 6-0 Tampa Bay loss, the back-to-back 10 goals.
The Seattle loss was bad.
I wasn't there at least, but I had to sit through those other ones, right? Like that Boston game was playoff caliber Sharks right there.
Comparatively, defensively and their goaltending, fine. They just had no offense, none. Yeah. But Boston's a great team, so that's the way it goes. We'll talk a little bit about the game that I went to later on. But speaking of defensemen this week. They answered one question, which was, what happens if we have too many defensemen, considering the Sharks have 9 currently still with the Sharks, I think, plus Ruta on injured reserve. They waived Nikolai Knyzhov, who is 25. He still has this year and one more year on a $1.25 million per year contract. Waived him today, so tomorrow we'll find out if he clears. But it's interesting because we had mentioned earlier on this season that he might be one of the guys that, because he's on a 2-year contract, that they figure they might be able to waive without him getting picked up. And
Yeah,
I
sneak him
think,
through.
yeah, sneak him through. And I think if we're being completely honest, he might be the last one in terms of play this year. So Hotiuk,
Sure.
Emberson, Addison, everybody else has kind of stepped up their play, where I don't
I
think
mean, it's him or
Knyzhov particularly
Vlasic, right?
has.
Those have been the frequent scratches.
Yeah, so you either have to waive Mark-Edouard Vlasic or Nikolai Knyzhov. There's going to be fans, and there have been on Twitter, who have been basically like, why did we waive Vlasic at this moment? But
Well, Knyzhov can
yeah.
benefit from playing with the Barracuda, ice time and all that stuff, right? Like I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, for Vlasic, what's the point of that?
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
the end
I guess
game if you're-
anyone can benefit from playing, but still, that's an insult to somebody who's had such a great career, specifically with the Sharks. And there could come a point where you do that, but this isn't the point, though. Knyzhov actually can benefit from. He's still just 25 and obviously had a series of horrific injuries a couple of years ago, and so he can benefit from playing there. So Vlasic, no. So I think that's an obvious thing. That's a no-brainer. Also, too, you're giving Knyzhov a chance too. That if somebody likes, Knyzhov still has a nice blend of size and skating ability that didn't go away with the injuries. And so, if team was willing to take a chance on him, then you give a player who has who has earned it from his hard work, kind of a new lease on life somewhere else. So, so you have that opportunity, or like I said, he gets to go to the Barracuda, and that's actually a benefit to him.
Yeah, if you waive Vlasic, it's like signaling the end times. Like it is saying that, this is it. And
yeah,
I honestly,
what are you
I
doing?
that,
What's he gonna do there?
Sharks don't need the cap space they would gain from
Nope.
really sending Vlasic down, or even whatever's going to happen with Vlasic, and it something will happen probably one way or the other,
right?
soon.
Eventually.
But it probably wasn't this time. And
Knyzhov, there's an outside chance someone will pick him up too. Vlasic, there's no chance, and so
nothing. Yeah. What's the point? You might as well keep Vlasic around, because you can also just insert Vlasic into a lineup if you absolutely have to. Anyway, it's not like he's pretty close to not functional at the NHL level, but you could still, if you need him in a pinch, I guess.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm not upset about the move. I think Knyzhov, great story, still a decent player. I'm happy he's still with the Sharks. I don't think he's going to get picked up. So
I don't think so
a chance
either.
He comes back up. So
and he's been passed by a lot of guys, which we sort of alluded to, guys like Hotiuk and Emberson and Addison. I know a couple of those guys are right-handers, but just in terms of just youth and just in terms of just spots, right? Because if you look at the Sharks' defense, Ferraro's comfortably going to play every game. I think Benning is up there. Ruda's probably in there too, just as a veteran, right? And so there's not that many spots unless there's injuries.
Sure.
And so so it's something had to give, and something already did give obviously this season with Shimmick going down. But like I said, Knyzhov can benefit. I don't think he'll get picked up, and so you might come back and be helpful for the Sharks at some point later in the season. Let's say they make a trade. They trade a defenseman away at some point. They trade one of the Affinity Stones away, and that's actually funny. There's 6 Affinity Stones. There's six spots for a defense in the lineup. Obviously, Mike Grier and David Quinn have been creative with it, with Jacob McDonald. But anyway, though,
Jacob McDonald hype train is still alive and well, despite everybody's
he's been pretty good as a forward. The games when they started promoting him to third line forward, I watched those games and I was like, well, yeah, he actually has been among the better forwards on a bad team, but among the better forwards on this team. And so I think he has actually deserved. He hasn't looked out of place even on a third line. And so, I think he's earned all the playing time, and it's actually come to a point where I think his versatility as a forward, being a pretty good forward, and also too, he is valid reason. I don't know if that's the right word. A credible, like you can put him as PP2, and he's not going to make you look bad out there too. He's basically been switching back and forth. He's been a third line winger, and he's been a PP2, power play 2 quarterback defenseman, and he's done a good job there too, because he has good offensive instincts, and obviously he has good. We've seen it, good AHL numbers, and so if this is who he is at a minimum contract, it's for this team, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's the hype train. I thought that it would be him on defense,
PP1,
you know, yeah.
But that's why Addison's there though. So
yeah, and yeah, it's tough because he isn't playing bad at all, and it's just it's a strange situation. But he's still and it seems like an NHL player at this moment in his career.
He was a fourth line forward for a better team, the Avalanche last year.
Sure.
So now that he's playing third line, it kind of tells you that okay, he's playing for a worse team, that he can play on the third line. But again, when he's been out there, he's been decent.
Yeah. So you got to keep him up, and then yeah, I really liked Emerson's play. I think it's been a little up and down, but I think he's had a few good games where I've noticed him being good, not just like
for a guy that
good.
First NHL season, right?
Yeah.
I think I don't even know if he's played 15 games yet. Maybe he just played his 15th game. He's been scratched a little bit. He has been pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Addison, I think, is adjusting. We'll talk about him later on in the episode, and.
Let me add one note. Sorry about Emerson.
Sure.
I was going to write a little bit about this, but I don't think I'm going to get to it.
Sure.
I've been talking with people, and I could see that there could be a degree of interest in him in a trade. It may not be worth it because you're not going to get a lot for him, but it could be shades of Asimont last year, who obviously the Sharks picked up on waivers and converted to a 4th round pick. I think I can see he'll have to keep it up. Obviously, he's still pretty raw and unproven, obviously, playing so few games in NHL. But people are noticing a little bit. And I think it might be a question like, is it worth it to, hey, you converted a waiver claim to, say, a 5th round pick? Nothing, you say you're not getting anything credible. So I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But He's played some pretty good hockey, and he's played within himself, which is a hard thing to do on a team like this, where it's really tempting to try to do too much and be the hero and all that kind of stuff. And I think he's done a pretty good job. Just solid. Being steady, solid, right? And so, and he's young still, and his contract expires this year, so it's kind of like no risk for a team to take on if a team needs some bottom pairing or number seven defenseman help, just somebody solid as a depth guy. He can be maybe a depth guy on a better team. And so I think that could be a question that Grier might have to answer. Is it going to be worth it? It's obviously a good asset management to go from waiver claim to a 5th round pick, a 4th round pick, whatever it is, right?
Same thing with Asimont, right?
Right, exactly. Asimont, So I think that he's opening some eyes in that way because
what stood out to me ever since I first watched him is his mobility is really, really good. His 4-way mobility he covers a lot of ice really quickly. He can change directions and keep a wide path super well at this current level. Yeah, you're right. He's not gonna wow you offensively, but he can make a decent pass. And, he
deserved the assist on the Granlund goal yesterday. That was a nice stretch indirect pass that Duclair skated into, and Duclair passed it to himself. I know. I think the who's Schmidt. I know he touched it, so that's why neither of them got an assist. But in a friendlier building, maybe that would have been counted as an assist, and everyone would have turned a blind eye to it. But that was a really nice play, and he's made a couple of nice offensive plays with that.
So I agree. I would be actually more hesitant to trade him other than because the Sharks, I think they need more of those kind of wins.
Guys like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I would be hesitant to trade him, but I agree that he's kind of gaining value, and I think that's kind of interesting to see on this team. So
we're gonna have this discussion about Blackwood, so I may as well just ask you.
Same thing. We're getting into the Christmas sell spirit. You're trying to buy and sell because you gotta get those
Yankee
Christmas
swap.
presents. Yankee swap. We're getting to that spirit now. We'll talk about Blackwood in a minute.
Emerson, though, what draft pick would you take for him?
Ooh, oh, that's tough. It's gonna come back to haunt me if somehow in like 3 years
Right now,
Amberson's
right now, right now.
right now.
Yeah. It's only been 15 or so games from him. Good flashes, but obviously it
You
could
got him
turn
for
quickly
free.
too. Got him
You
for
got him for
free. Yeah.
free. If a team gives you like a third round pick and say like a defense prospect from their fourth round plus from the past few years, why not? Sure.
Ooh, that's a rich price. I mean, I
It's
think like,
rich. But
yeah,
is a third rounder or a fifth round defenseman ever going to be as good as Emerson is right now? Maybe, but probably not.
they should be. I hope so.
Well, yeah, like third round picks have like a 20% chance of
Yeah.
even making the NHL.
Sure.
So like, I don't know.
Okay.
Emerson seems better
Okay.
than that. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Just curious where your love for Ty is at this moment. So
At this moment, I mean, I've
yeah.
loved him for a while, but
Yeah. You liked him. You've been on the Ty train since they picked him up.
it's like you got the Jacob McDonald hype train, and then at the very end, there's a Ty Emerson little caboose.
Solid, just chugging along,
Yeah,
pushing the hype train along.
there we go. I like these metaphors. We're just full of metaphors today. All right, last bit of news before we get into the main topic. Logan Couture, still injured.
Yeah,
That's
there's no news.
it.
Basically, he's still injured, didn't travel. There's talk that he might start skating soon. He may have well started skating the last couple of days or so in San Jose. I am going to join the road trip at the Rangers game, so I think that is something if it's not asked, I'll ask if he started skating or not.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's really no timeline.
Yeah, it's interesting because they waived Knyzhov today, which I think opens up one or two roster
It opens up,
spots.
so waiving Knyzhov and putting Cunnin on IR.
Yep.
That opens up. But they were at 23 with those two moves, assuming that Knyzhov clears. Well, it doesn't matter, clears or gets claimed, right? That opens
Yeah.
up a
They have
roster
two
spot.
spots,
So they have
right?
two spots, and likely Barabanov is close.
Yeah.
Ruda is close too, and Zadina's on his trip too. And Zadina, there's hope that he'll play at some point in his road trip too. I think so. More likely, probably Barabanov and Ruda, but
Yeah.
Zadina's in the picture too. And so yeah, so that
Probably.
that will take up the roster spots.
Sure. So probably not Couture, but we'll never. Well, we'll see.
No, it's not. It's not gonna be Couture. No,
Yeah.
he's not on a trip. He's not skating. Sorry,
Yeah. That's it.
I don't want to feed any false hope. It's not gonna be Couture. So
I know. Yeah. It was interesting because there was a little bit of like gamesmanship about Hurdle coming back, but his
yeah,
injury
but
makes a lot more sense of why he could come back
and he's
rather than
actually on the
Couture's.
road trip. He's actually on the
Yeah.
road trip. Yeah, so that's
Yeah. Exactly.
that's a little bit different. So
Anyway, so your prediction was correct. We are in December, and
oh
Couture
yeah, well.
is still not back.
Sorry for it because I really like watching Logan play. I
Yep.
really like really responsible players like him. I think I mentioned a few games ago. I think it was the Montreal game, which I also was not at but Nico Sturm drew a penalty along the wall. I think it was Matheson that tried to check him, and
Mm.
Matheson just bounced off him, and Sturm drew a pen. I genuinely love watching guys like that. It's obviously not necessarily about the goals and the assists. Nico has
Sure.
0 this year, but it's about sort of just a dedication to right hockey, playing right, winning hockey. And Logan does that all the time. Obviously, Sturm does that. I know it hasn't amounted to a lot of wins, but I don't look to those guys as being the reasons why.
Yeah. Hoping he comes back soon. I
Mhm.
miss him. When he does, the week that he comes back, I will wear a jersey, no matter what. Bam.
I don't know. Yeah, that he may be a harbinger for the Blackhawks winning #1 pick, though. The return of
Oh
Logan
no!
Couture and winning
Stop it!
some games for the Sharks. So
Stop it!
the
Anyway,
harbinger of lottery death.
oh god, we are actually in terms of the standings tied with Chicago currently.
Oh, is it tied? Wow. Yeah.
14 points each, but Chicago has 2 less games played. But yeah, and Anaheim's lost 8 games in a row, so they're
Have they
creeping
lost 8
up
games
as
in a row?
well.
Wow. Okay. I
8
didn't know it
games.
was
They're
quite that. I thought that they were. I didn't think that they were going to make the playoffs or anything. But yeah. Well,
yeah.
I mean, they still have plenty of time to kind of
I think the last game they won was against the Sharks.
settle into the mushy middle. Still, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we still expect the Sharks to be in the last spot, but you never know. Legs are kind of getting a little tighter with the Sharks playing better.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Main topic of today. let's talk about Mackenzie Blackwood.
Mm.
Mackenzie Blackwood has been kind of the one of the low bright spots.
He's
This
been a
season.
team MVP. He's won
Team
Player of the Month,
MVP,
which
yep.
I think is fan voted, but I think it's been accurate. He's won Player of the Month for October and November, and I think that's fair. And he has been, he's been the best player on the team.
He's 3-10-2 in terms of his record, which is something. He does have a .903 save percentage, which is decent, and a .356 goals against average in a total of 17 games played, 15 games started. So
right, but we had to look deeper than that, of course, which I know that you know, but those stats don't tell the story of his season. I've had a couple stories about it. According to Sport Logic, it might have been because he didn't play the New Jersey game, but he was 5th in the league in quality starts. And for Sport Logic, a quality start is a game where goalie has a +1 or above goals saved above expected.
Yep.
And Blackwood, I think, is maybe 3rd in the league with 3 steals. And steals are basically a game where the goals saved above expected that you have in a game makes up for the difference of the game, and you win the game for the team. And so Blackwood also too leads the league in high danger shots faced.
Yeah, which
so
makes sense.
So don't look at the save percentage. Definitely don't look at the record. Blackwood has been terrific this season.
Yeah, we're gonna mention another goaltender who did very well in the beginning of a season, James Reimer, a few years ago, and kind of compared.
Let's wait for that though. Yeah, let's get into the discussion then. Yeah, because we have Keegan and I have sort of differing points of view in terms of not that different, but there's shades of difference here in terms of whether or not the Sharks should basically arguments for keeping or trading Mackenzie Blackwood. And so before we start with sort of, because I'm of the mind that you have to be open-minded about it. He's not untouchable by any stretch. But before we get there, though, let's talk about how good he's been, right? And I've talked about some of the underlying stats, the micro stats, right, behind Blackwood's strong play. It hasn't been a mirage. He's been really good this year. I think I understand, too, a lot of Sharks fans, they've seen a lot of bad goaltending for the last 5 years, save for that stretch with Reimer that we're going to talk about. But we've seen a lot of the Sharks fans have seen a lot of bad goaltending over the last few years. So I understand that the last 2 months of Mackenzie Blackwood have been sort of a oasis, right? And so when you get a taste of some water after months and years in the desert, then you want to stay at that well forever, right?
More metaphors, man. We got this.
And also too. Blackwood right now, the offers probably won't be outstanding because the Sharks, obviously, we also know the background of Blackwood was acquired for just a 6th-round pick during the summer from the Devils. There's a reason why he was so cheap. The last 2 years, he's dealt with a lot of injuries, so very up and down seasons for him. And so teams have seen this great start from Blackwood, obviously, other teams in the league, but other teams in the league have also seen the last couple of years of Blackwood. And so if a team is throwing out, like, say, a 4th-round pick for Blackwood, right? And yes, for asset management, you got a 6 for Blackwood, so that's a plus there. But obviously, a starting goaltender who's doing what Blackwood is doing is worth more than a 4th-round pick. So, and a 4th-round pick isn't that valuable in the big picture of things. And so you wouldn't, for sure, you wouldn't touch that. And so I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts of why the Sharks should keep Blackwood before we talk about why they should think about trading him?
It's been a long time. He's doing pretty well. He's pretty young, I think is a good thing to point out. He's not like James Reimer where he's 34, 33, whatever he was. He's 26 currently, so he's not like out of the theoretical window. He could be. And goaltending is very up and down, obviously. So and inconsistent. So it's not, but he's not so old that you have to trade him because, like, what is the point?
Sure.
Right? They're never going to be good because he's too old that he won't be good by the time they're good. So that's one reason to keep him.
Yeah, he is 27, 26.
I think he's 26.
Make sure. Yeah, I think he is 26 actually. So
he is. Capo's 27. Blackwood is 26. So still young enough. You have a decent. It feels again like found money, and you never want to let go of found money unless you're going to get a good return for it. Like it feels like you want to hold out for as much as possible. So I think for right now, that's a good reason to keep him. But why should the Sharks trade Blackwood? Is it even more fun question? And it is the Christmas spirit. It's the season of giving. Why should the Sharks give Blackwood to another team? I think we differ slightly. Only because of what we're looking for in terms of the return. I'm looking for a first round pick. And it's from a playoff team that really, really needs goaltending help. And is willing to pay for it towards the trade deadline, and that's something that happens pretty much every year. Rarely for goaltenders.
Not really a first rounder, though.
Yeah, I know, but every year somebody does pay out their nose for some sort of player for a first round pick that they shouldn't have. And I think if the Sharks play their cards right, it could be somebody like Blackwood if he's playing well enough. So that's kind of my argument, is to try and keep him for a first round pick, or like a goaltending prospect that's a real solid goaltending prospect. And it's kind of that one for one where if you're trading away this guy who's 26, you need to make up for it with a guy who's younger, who's going to step into your team when the Sharks are good again. So I don't know if a second round pick does it for me, but what do you think, Sheng?
Well, but you're talking about a first and a goalie prospect. I mean, you're talking about something that but
like a solid, very, very solid goalie.
Nonetheless, though, like I don't know if there's been a goalie that's gone for a first rounder in a very, very long time, because that used to happen, but teams sort of got wise to that, and so they stopped they stopped doing that.
Voodoo.
But anyway, I'm curious though. Actually, I'm gonna look this up real fast, because I'm curious the last time a goalie has.
It wouldn't be during the trade deadline. Probably it's going to be like an off-season trade or something.
Even been like sort of involved. Like obviously, I don't think there's been a direct goalie for first round swap in a while, but let me I'm just curious. I'm gonna look back really fast at goalies and what they command. A lot of these are sort of backup sorts, or guys are just getting rid of contracts, so it's not okay. So Adin Hill, right, 4th round pick. Getting a first round.
It's gonna be Hasek or Roy.
I mean, Vidic. No, it's gonna be someone back then, because that's when teams were. Well, I think maybe Ryan Miller might have been the one.
Corey Schneider got traded for a first, I think.
Yeah, I think Miller might have been more recent. Miller, St. Louis to from Buffalo. Maybe Schneider was a little more recent than that, but that's a good decade ago. Vanacek recently, 2nd round pick, New Jersey, Washington. Georgiev, a couple thirds.
Some more second, third range, sure.
Yeah. And so I'm just not seeing. Yeah,
it's going to be Schneider. I think it's going to be Schneider. I'm trying to think if there's another one.
Yeah. When was that trade?
No. Well, if we have a very famous one, right? Wasn't Martin Jones traded for?
Yes, that's a fair one. That's 2015. And of course, with Schneider and Jones, they were very young goalies then that were seen as. Okay, here's a good one. Okay, so it's more recent than I remembered. So our fault. Darcy Kemper went for a first. True. I mean, it was a conditional first, and it was a very conditional first. The Avs had to win the Stanley Cup, which they did. So that one almost doesn't count, because that's a pretty high condition. So, but to win a Stanley Cup, I mean, I know Colorado's a very good team, but still.
Yeah. I mean, they were looking for that exact trade, and they made the exact right trade at the right. Like, that's what they needed, and that was a good trade overall. Right. Thinking back on it, but yeah, no, I didn't even think about that one. I would think more of like Jones or Schneider or.
But those are different, yeah, because those are like younger, again, up and coming guys. I think Schneider had more of a track record too, whereas Jones obviously was just a backup in LA, but he was seen as a future number one. He didn't have the injury questions that obviously come with Blackwood.
Sure. I mean, how old was Martin Jones when he was traded?
He was
So 2015, he would have been 25. So
yeah, but again, it's a different thing though, because once you have the bad track record that Blackwood has had, that changes things, right?
I know, but I'm just saying, like, that's if you rehab his image so much that he is considered to be a future #1 goaltender for a long time.
You don't have a time machine. You can't rehab the last 2 years.
He's trying. Martin Jones is
or
trying.
Going back to the theme, you can't Thanos snap the last 2 years. Okay,
he's trying, or you do a conditional where same kind of thing.
Yeah, the Kemper one might be like the very best you can hope for. I think something like that, where it's a second. But if let's say it's Edmonton wins the Stanley Cup, then it becomes a first. Something like that might be the very best you can hope for. You're not going to get a package for him. He's not Connor Hellebuck. A goalie like that hasn't been traded in a long time. A guy like a Hellebuck or Shesterkin, a true elite goalie, and who has years of track record to prove it. No one is giving you a package for a guy that's played, 17, 15 really good games, so.
Yeah. I'm saying if by the deadline or maybe in the summer
as
well.
That's still 40 games. Again, a team's not going to give you a straight up first for it. There's nothing to support that. If we're looking at, even Kemper had a lot more track record, right? As a very good goalie in Arizona for a couple of years there.
Sure.
That Blackwood doesn't have right now and won't have by the summer either.
I think we're arguing two different things. I'm not arguing that he is or is not worth a first. I'm saying that, like, that's the price that I would pay at this moment.
I guess what I'm saying is you're talking about something that's not going to happen. Like, it's not even like reasonable. It's not
a 25-year-old goaltender, and Martin Jones was traded for a first-round pick like 5 years or 8 years ago. It's possible. It's not like impossible.
It's very, very unlikely. Okay, yeah. Well, then it's splitting hairs. Yeah, it's possible, but it's very, very unlikely because again, Jones was up and coming goalie. Blackwood is not seen as that anymore.
He's rehabbing, and he's rehabbing on the worst team in the NHL.
And I think he's also too, again, the injuries they matter a lot because team is going to look at a guy's health and be like, well, when he's healthy, he's good, but he's had all these injuries. Is he going to be healthy for us? Well,
so then if you get a second, are you happy? Like, if they call tomorrow and say you're going to get the 58th pick in the draft for Mackenzie Blackwood, are you happy?
Yeah, I think that's where we do differ. Yes,
no,
yeah,
I'm not. I'm not. Like, it's not at this point when the way that he's playing and how teams are struggling with goaltending, asset management. I'd rather hold out, like at least second plus a prospect or second plus something, right? Or for a second that could turn into a first, something like that. Because the squeeze point in the NHL is goaltending. It's every game ends at 8-1 right now, or 8-4, or 7-5, or something like that. And I don't know. Try and find a way to play your cards with Blackwood if you're going to trade him, or just keep him. But
I can see that, of course, goaltending is super important, right? And that's what you're saying about the squeeze point, right? And I also did want to mention the reason why we went back and forth about the value, right? Is that want to make this clear that we're not talking about just trading Mackenzie Blackwood, just a for sale sign and best offer gets him kind of thing. We're talking about, I'm talking about a second, you're talking about a first, right? But either way, we're talking about a fairly premium asset coming back for a guy that, let's not forget, was acquired for just the 6th round pick over the summer. So a fourth is obviously, like I said, it's good. It's good asset management, but that's not worth it for the Sharks. Fourth is a pretty unremarkable pick. Third, I would also say no to myself. But the reason why I would probably take a second is really premised on the unpredictability of goaltending. And I think that's something, we generally can agree on, that there's a handful of guys that have proven over time that they are your elite goalies, and they are those guys because they've done it over a track record a number of years. May have had a down year here and there, but in general, though, you can rely on Shesterkin, you can rely on Saros. I know it's off to a slow start, but in general, he's had a couple of very strong years, right? Hellebuck is the obvious one that's up there.
Sure.
There's a couple other guys that I haven't mentioned, but those are guys that if they hit a trade market, they might command a straight up first. But a guy like Blackwood, like I mentioned, 2 most recent years have been tough. You're premising your demands or what you want in a trade based on, like I said, literally 15 games. And last episode we talked about not judging a player too fast based on a small sample size in a negative way. Guys like Zetterlund and Hoffman and Cunnin and guys like that, right? You can say the same thing about judging a guy off of a positive sample of 15 or so starts here in Blackwood. And sure. I'm not disputing how good he's been. He has been, right? And I'm not disputing either that if he is able to keep this up over the next few years, and as the Sharks get better, his save percentage is going to look better. His record's obviously going to look better. If he's able to keep it up, then he's worth a lot more than a second-round pick. But it's sort of the gamble that you take that sometimes blows up in your face, obviously. But it's a gamble that you take that, okay, this guy has raised his value. Will he keep it up? And if he keeps it up, of course, he's worth more than a second. He's worth probably more than one first. A solid goaltender that you can rely on, like night in, night out for a number of years, like a Lundqvist type, that kind of
yeah,
guy.
But
that guy is. Yeah. I'm just saying that guy is worth his weight in gold for sure. That guy is a franchise, but you can literally build your franchise around a guy like that because you know that he's going to keep you competitive, no matter whatever the hell you do with the rest of the roster, right? So with a guy like Blackwood, again, goaltending is so unpredictable that he can drop off just as soon as we can be recording a podcast a month from now, and the stats go the other way. And reason why we talk about Reimer, right? And Reimer, I think people have forgotten how good James Reimer was, especially in the beginning of the 2021-22 season, and the first, we're at the 24 game mark for the Sharks. At the 24 game mark for James Reimer, his save percentage in 2021-22 was .934. .934. He was fielding legitimate questions about.
Is he going to win the Vezina?
No, not the Vezina. There were no Vezina questions, but actually questions about. Are you thinking about going to the Olympics? Because that's when the NHL was still planning on going to the Olympics with their stars that year at the beginning of that 2021-22 season. He was fielding legit questions about that because he was playing so well. Canada has had sort of a dearth of elite goaltending for the last few years or so. That's why Blackwood's name has been in there too. When he was younger in New Jersey, that he might be Team Canada's goalie of the future. And then Reimer, he slowed down that season, which was going to happen. He's not a .930 goalie. And San Jose got worse that year too. They started off the season with, I think, Bob Bugner had them playing a little tighter defense, but as they started losing, the team slacked off around Reimer a little bit, right? And so he's not a guy that's like prime era Dominic Hasek that's going to be able to put up those kind of numbers around a bad team. Yeah. Just not. It's not anything against Reimer's game. And obviously last year he wasn't very good. And obviously the team defense wasn't great either, but he was worse than the team defense last year, I think. I know there might be some disagreement on that, but he wasn't very good last year, regardless,
not
be
really.
it team or Reimer himself. And so I think my overall point to talk about the unpredictability of goaltending, that it can oscillate from good to bad really quickly. It also goes the other way too, where you can find a guy like a Mackenzie Blackwood for, guess what, a 6th round pick. If you're Vegas, you can find an Adin Hill for, guess what, a 4th round pick. Yep. You're the Sharks, you can find a James Reimer off free agency for, I think it was $2.1 million for a couple of years there. Goaltending is, I think the way that I look at goaltending, which I know is not necessarily how everyone else sees it, and I can't. I mean, I understand again where a lot of Sharks fans are coming from. I've seen things like if the Sharks, very extreme opinions. So I'm not saying this is the regular one, but like I saw one where the Sharks if the Sharks trade Blackwood, Mike Grier should get fired, and things like that, which just I
No, I
understand
don't
the
think so.
attachment. I understand the attachment to goaltending. They are the last line of defense. When you've got a good one, when you've got a great one, like I said, it's worth your weight in gold. And
Sure.
you make a trade. Let's say you do get an offer for a second round pick for a block, which is what I want to add, which I think is not right now. It's too soon, but maybe by the deadline, it is possible because um like I mentioned, teams do see the last 2 years where he struggled, obviously. But if we go even before that, the 2 years before he struggled, people were talking about him being Team Canada's starter. He was sixth in the Calder voting. He looked like he was going to be a very solid, maybe not a elite top 5 guy, but he looked like he was going to be
Sure.
maybe a top 10 guy for a while for the Devils. He looked like the Devils goalie of the future, and so he has pretty good pedigree. Is I guess what I'm getting at. So that does balance things out a little bit in terms of his injury plagued last couple of years. And so I can see very, very best. I don't think you'll get the conditional first rounder, honestly, because I think
Probably
Kemper had
not.
more track record. But a second, though, a straight up second, I can see that as not outlandish. I think a team might pay that if they're desperate enough. And my argument for why you take that is because you just don't know. And it's nothing against Blackwood. He's been great this year. If he keeps it up, then yeah, he's gonna make me and Mike Grier, if he took such a trade, look really stupid. That you traded a guy that's undisputed number one goalie for,
Sure.
let's say, the next half decade for just a second round pick. Of course, I agree with that, but I'm saying it's a risk. You're taking that risk right now. The guy's value is high, just like why you traded Erik Karlsson. Not the only reason why you traded Erik Karlsson this past summer, but you don't want to run the risk of Erik getting hurt or not playing as well because he's older or whatever, right? You want to kind of capture the value at its not at its height, obviously, because obviously if Mackenzie Blackwood balls out this year, he balls out next year, his value is going to be back to where it was in his early days in New Jersey. And maybe you can actually talk about a first round pick for him, but you want to capture a guy's value when it's high is my point. Maybe not at its highest, but at its high. And you take that chance.
You
And
do worry
so
that it's going to bottom out. If he
yeah,
does, your value will plummet to zero if he has like a month and a half where he's bad.
I think it's kind of crazy
And
just how attached Sharks fans are, just because it's been 15 games. And I know that,
well, you
again, it's
can,
like Stockholm syndrome. It's like the Titanic meme. It's been 84
yeah,
years. I get that. But like,
it's been 84 years. No, it's that. And also they watched, he'll get traded away for a fourth round pick and
yeah,
watched him win a Stanley Cup. Like
sure.
the James Reimer's 934 save percentage in 2021, 2022. I just looked up who would be would that be beating the NHL's best right now? And the best goaltender in the NHL right now is Adin Hill with a 935. So yeah, by .01, he would be beating, or he would be losing to Adin Hill. So I just don't want to see that happen again. And it's not going to be that. I don't think the Sharks are going to trade, Blackwood for a fourth round pick if he's doing very well by the deadline. I
No, they're
think it'll
not going to trade
be
for fourth. Yeah.
they're gonna try and maximize his value if they're gonna consider trading him. A couple like points against, like, obviously Kemper had a much better track record when he was traded for a conditional first, but he was older. He was also a UFA. He was also more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So something to consider that too. I
Okay.
think his contract was something like a 5 or 6 million at that point, and he was near 30,
Mm-hmm.
or 31, and he was a UFA. Blackwood's 26. He's got 2 years left, so you could have this year as a cup run and next year if he plays
Mm-hmm.
well. If you don't win the cup
He has a
for a
good
team,
contract at
so
his caliber of play for sure.
yeah. So I mean, there is some pluses and minuses, but the risk is greater because goaltending. If you're not, like you said, if you're not Soros, Shesterkin, Hellebuck, Vasilevsky, um, Olmark for the past 2 years, it's tough to really be considered a starting goaltender rather than like a guy who's just in the starting net, right? If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. there's like a small amount of guys that are considered those caliber of goaltenders. So I don't think Blackwood's there yet. And I agree. I think we're being a little bit unrealistic in terms of the hype around Mackenzie Blackwood, because it's not like he's making the Sharks win every night. He's not Hasek. He's like,
well, he's making the Sharks win the games
good.
They have, though. So I'm going to give him that much credit.
This is very true. He does have the 3 wins that he won. A lot of it could be due to him.
Yeah.
And the shootout loss, obviously. Was it a shootout or an overtime loss? I can't.
It was a shootout. Colorado. Yeah, I believe that was a shootout loss.
Yeah, a shootout. So I understand, and there is some rationality behind it, but I just want to see like a premium trade. Like if we're gonna do this, I want to see some assets that are gonna really help the Sharks in the future. And some teams could use it. I mean, we're just gonna keep harping the Edmonton drum, but they've had horrible goaltending this year. They have a $5 million anchor on their team currently for the next 3 years because of bad goaltending. So I don't know. I don't think I would take back Campbell in a trade, but maybe there's a different team that's got a similar situation where they could trade some bad contracts to the Sharks and also a first rounder, kind of like they did with Carlson.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that could happen. Yeah. If you throw Campbell into it, then it becomes... a reasonable. Campbell's contract is very, very bad. It's 4 more years at $5 million. So
that's
you're
first
asking
on its own.
for at minimum a first just to take on a contract, probably more, and then maybe I don't know if you get a first in Blackwood. Maybe you do, because then the value of the Campbells, that's actually 40 years at $5 million. That's arguably 2 firsts. And you throw Blackwood into that scenario too, right? So in that case, sure, but I don't know if Edmonton's gonna.
So maybe there's a different team that that has a non horrible contract like Campbell's right now. But
and this is where I disagree. But I would trade Blackwood if someone came up with the 2nd round pick straight up for him right now. I would at least think really heavily on it. You did bring up a good point earlier. I don't know if I'm interrupting or you were going to get to it, but you mentioned that it matters the 2nd round pick, which about where it ends up. Is it a 30 to 40 or is it a later in the second, right? But let's say Edmonton offered a I don't even know if they have. Do they have their own 2nd round pick for next year, 2024?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because when picks go out later, they have less value. Okay, so I would take that for Blackwood right now, because there's a chance that Edmonton can turn its play around and that pick ends up in the 50s, not as great. But there's also a chance that Edmonton keeps losing. And that pick ends up in the 30s. Right?
It's like 38.
So that's a good spin of the roulette wheel. And if there is a chance that they give you that conditional first if they win the cup, okay, that even better spin right there, right? And I think overall, I think my general thought, and actually you just kind of alluded to it, that there's really just, I don't know, a handful of truly elite guys, and those guys are worth multiple first. I think if you can get, if your team is in the right place of contention where you need a guy like that, I think that they can be worth that. Hellebuck, et cetera, right? Guys like that, right? And then there's everybody else. So you have your 5 or 10 elite guys, and then you have everybody else. And that everybody else, from year to year, their performances fluctuate. And you take a chance on one guy, it works out. You take a chance on another guy, it doesn't work. It's really hard to say who's going to work out of that pile. And again, the Sharks have seen both sides of it, from Adin Hill not playing great with the Sharks, but obviously great with the Golden Knights. James Reimer playing great for the Sharks, at least at the beginning, for a very low cost. And obviously Blackwood here for just a 6th round pick. So I think that I'm sort of taking that. It's a risk, obviously, but I think that because the one thing that, in terms of what you're saying, right? You have to be ready for the other part of it, that Blackwood's value reverses itself. His play drops. I think that's a distinct possibility. And so for me, heading that possibility off, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I hope it doesn't. I've really liked watching him play so far this year. And he has provided, I think he has been better than Reimer was in Reimer's good stretch, because there was a better team playing in front of Reimer in 21-22. So I would say my sort of untrained goaltending eye, that this is the best goaltending that the Sharks have received over a long stretch, 2-month stretch. That actually I've ever covered, because the Sharks goaltending has been pretty bad since I started covering the team in 2018-19. So this is the best stretch of Sharks goaltending that I've seen. So I think, even though Blackwood's save percentage is far from Reimer's from a couple years ago. But again, I guess
it's only comparable to that one time, and then maybe before that, like when Martin Jones was actually playing well.
Well, for 2 months though, Jones didn't play well for 2 months. Jones would have like 2 weeks or so where he'd be amazing.
Well, before that, like there was when he was in the first couple playoff runs with the Sharks.
Oh no, I'm talking strictly 2018-19 though. 2018-19.
Oh
strictly, yeah. Strictly since I've covered the Sharks. Yeah. So you have to be like, you have to be prepared for Blackwood's value to possibly go the other way, and you'll be like, man, I wish I had taken that second round pick from Edmonton, this hypothetical second round pick from Edmonton right now. But anyway, yes, I would take that from Edmonton right now, straight up, no Campbell. Edmonton obviously I don't know if they could even fit in a Blackwood now, but maybe they can, because his contract is small enough that it's with some massaging it might work.
I think they could.
They probably trade something small away. Yeah,
trade you back Pickard and
Connor Brown
their
or
backup.
something, right? I don't know. Yeah, so.
Yeah, but they'd figure it out, I think, to be able to fit it. And to be honest, I think that's a good argument. Edmonton's in a bad enough spot in the standings that I probably would take it too. There's not that much of a functional difference between like the 39th overall pick and like the 31st, 30th. So yeah, I'd probably take it too.
Okay, so we agree.
We do. We came to an agreement. I would hope that there's a conditional first. Yeah. I'd hope there's a conditional first on there. But if it's Edmonton specifically, I'd take their second.
Okay.
But
you said you wouldn't take a late second though, right?
No, I don't think
like a likely late second. Okay.
Unless it's like a second and a third. Then we're second and a fourth, maybe. Second. I think there's just a little bit of a difference between. Well, there's a huge difference in terms of where the draft falls between like 45 on and 45 up.
Sure.
And like, I don't know, Blackwood seems to be the one bright spot for the Sharks. So I'd never wear a jersey again on this podcast if we traded Blackwood, because they'd lose every game.
You would.
He does look, and I'll mention this during the when we talk about the Bruins game, but he does look like, I don't know, like he just. In certain ways, like when you compare the two goaltenders, Blackwood just seems to be like a starting goaltender. I don't know if that makes sense. Like when you watch him, compared to Capo. Like not that Capo's bad, and to be honest,
Capo
the
was
reverse.
Great last night. And I'm going to say this for Capo too.
Yeah.
That he has a better inner slot save percentage this year than Blackwood. So I just want to say that
I don't know.
On Kakinen's behalf. So. They both have very good inner slot, high danger save percentages. Is all from Sport Logic, but Capo I think is
slightly better,
like top 10. Was top 10 and was top 10 before the New Jersey game, and I'm sure that the New Jersey game
Capo looks significantly better than he did last year. Last year he looked shaky like every time he played. It felt like, and this year he hasn't looked that way in every game, other than obviously some of the blowout losses.
I could be wrong, but I think he might be working on a 3-game personal winning streak.
Is he?
I gotta look at that. I was thinking about that yesterday. I'm gonna double check, because I do want to say this. I'm not advocating for the Sharks to trade Mackenzie Blackwood or Kaapo Kähkönen. But what I'm talking about is, if for the right offer, do you think about it? And yes, I would think about it more heavily than I think a lot of other people would. And so, but I'm not stressing that the Sharks should, unless they get anything close to. Okay. No, I was wrong though about Kähkönen. He started the Seattle game, so he's won 3 of his last 4. So St. Louis, lost Seattle, beat Vancouver. Yeah, that's for this team. That's incredible. And I'm just looking at the shots he faced. 45 shots against St. Louis. 47 last night and 33 again in the Vancouver win. So
yeah, be really curious to see if you removed like the 2 10-0 games or 10 whatever games and the 2 like 7-0 games that they've both played in. like, what would their save percentage be if you just remove those horrific games?
You can't do that. I see people do it all the time in fantasy football.
They're like,
we take out the guy's 60-yard touchdown. He only had 44 yards over 12 carries. You can't take out
so he's not that good. So he's not that good.
Yeah,
no, I know.
Yeah. So
no, I agree, but it's interesting. The anyway, I think Blackwood right now is a little bit of he's on a hot streak, and it's good that he's comfortable too. Like, I expected him to be much worse this year, and he hasn't been.
I mean, look, like I put out an article with somebody talked to Mike McKenna, knows a lot about goalies. He thought that Blackwood, based on his injuries and what he saw from him in New Jersey, should have started the season in AHL, not as an insult to Blackwood, but just that he needed that time and space to rebuild his game. And apparently he didn't.
So we agree. Edmonton second, conditional first, solid. And maybe we take back I don't know, somebody shitty from Edmonton. That's the answer.
So not a for sale sign, but for above market value. If you're willing to pay above market rate for Mackenzie Blackwood, so that's what it says on the menu. So we're not putting out a price. We're putting in a market price, and that's.
It's like, give me your best offer, but if we don't like that offer, we're going to reject it. So, and it's just it does feel like a good win for the Sharks. Same thing with that we get from like claiming Ty Emberson and all that. Yeah, it feels good,
but better.
But better. It feels good.
No, it would feel bad though if Blackwood does become the answer for somebody in net for the next 5 years. And I will say I wouldn't put it past him. He is very talented, and the pedigree was there a couple of years ago, and so that's obviously an argument for, well, let's hold out for that first. And
that was the argument for trading for Adin Hill too, was that when he was with the Coyotes, his underlying stats were like very good despite his
but that was limited games though, I think. So it was a little different with Adin. But with Blackwood was actually a legit starter just for a year maybe of high level play. But also, too, I think Blackwood, since he was drafted, he's really built his value. Like, he was seen as a future starter, whereas Adin Hill, I don't know if Adin was. I still actually people still say to me like I can't believe the Sharks traded a second for him, and now we kind of know why. You know, Adin has proved the doubters wrong, but there wasn't he was no Carter Hart or even Mackenzie Blackwood in terms of sort of hype and that sort of thing. And I mentioned this when we were prepping for this episode. I want to shout out too. I think it's funny all the people these days talking about how great Adin Hill is and how much like what a mistake it was by the Sharks to trade him, and that kind of like straight up revisionist history. There was very few people in my mentions, in my comments, when the Sharks traded Adin to Vegas for a 4th round pick, talking about, oh, what a mistake. This is going to haunt the Sharks. I think everybody was pretty happy actually that they were able to get a 4th round pick I was ecstatic. For him. I think the expectation was more of a reverse the 2nd round pick, that turn that to a round and that becomes a 5. So more likely a 5th round pick. So I wanted to shout out the only 2 people that I'm certain had Adin's back among the Shark, among fandom or whatever. Obviously Liz Child, big Adin Hill and WHL fan, and also Linda, a big Sharks fan who I've met that I'm sure you guys have seen online. Twitter handle Adin Hill Shutout. That's her Twitter handle, Adin Hill Shutout. And I think she's had that like from like probably before the Sharks acquired Adin. I think she's been a fan since his Arizona days. And so anyway, those are the only 2 people that have a right to wag their finger at Mike Grier for what happened with Hill in Vegas. I'm sure there are a couple more people that question it, but it was very, very few. And it's definitely not the number of people in the mentions that are carpetbagging Grier every time Adin Hill does something good. I mean, even myself, I would say that I did think it was, and I wrote this back then, so this is not me. This is not me jumping on the revisionist train. I thought it was very peculiar the way the Sharks' direction and goaltending, where you trade a second in Adin Hill. You invest a lot. You trade a second round pick for him, and then you give up on him so quickly. And also in the meanwhile, you acquire another young goalie about the same age in Kakinen. You trade a pretty good defenseman in Middleton for him. So basically, you traded out a second and a fringish top four defenseman, a good defenseman in Middleton, who would probably be on the Sharks beat like their number 2 defenseman right now. But anyway, you trade all that for 2 goalies, and you give 2 young goalies, and you only give Hill just 1 year to kind of prove his stuff. That didn't make sense to me, that part of it, where I thought that, well, maybe you trade Reimer off in that exchange in that place, because you gave up a second for Hill, so somebody believed in him. And so you give him more run. And then Reimer obviously had a better 2021-22. So maybe you get, I don't know if you, I know the Sharks were looking for a second for Reimer that summer, and they obviously didn't get it, or they might have traded Reimer, but maybe lower that demand to a third. Maybe you get that third for Reimer, maybe. And then you just run with Hill and Kakinen, go young, and hope one of those guys emerges. Anyway, so
that's
long
what they're
story
doing now. Right?
Yeah, that's what they're kind of doing now, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
so I just wanted to mention that. Wanted to shout out those two ladies. And as Rick said, very few group of people that should be saying anything about the Sharks and Adin Hill and the 4th round pick for him.
Yeah, it seemed like bad asset management all around in that way. I think they don't want to repeat the same.
Yeah,
curious. I don't think they want to repeat the same thing. I think an interesting comparable for Blackwood is Jacob Markstrom. So Markstrom was a 2nd round pick. He was drafted 31st overall.
Pretty good one.
He was
a highly thought of prospect. I mean, he was even more highly thought of than Blackwood in terms of he was going to be
the starter for Florida
Yeah.
And then he was traded for Roberto Luongo to Vancouver. And when he was 24, so like not that much younger than currently Blackwood is now, had up and down seasons in Vancouver until he suddenly kind of like got it, like mid or late 20s or so, and then signed a huge contract with Calgary and has been their starting goaltender since. But similar thought, like he was down, like he kept having like sub 880 save percentage years in the NHL. They'd send him back to the AHL repeatedly, and like it just took a little while. And he had that kind of pedigree where it was like, all right, there's a lot of talent here. We just got to keep working it out. And I don't know, that could be what Blackwood is. I don't think Blackwood is as talented, but I think it's an interesting. If Blackwood's career kind of,
I mean, if Blackwood, we talked about the cream of the crop, elite of elite, and maybe Markstrom is not quite there, but if Blackwood's career, or if his next 5 years are super solid, top 10-ish, fringe of top 10, a couple years, I'm sure he'll throw in some like really good years, maybe have a down year in there like Markstrom has had, right? But basically a very reliable starter, at least reliable relative to other starting goalies or other goalies in general. Then you would regret trading a second, or you would regret taking just a second for that. So yeah, I do concede that. And so I'm again talking about the gamble of it, and Blackwood doesn't have to be Shesterkin for the Sharks, for him to be valuable to the Sharks, for the Sharks to keep him and hold out for just a second. So
yeah,
that's a good comment.
I have a thought that they're going to keep him for a long time. I just don't think they're going to trade him. So I think his whole point is going to be moot anyway. I think that Grier likes his guys, and Grier picked this guy out, and it's a hell of a play right now. And I think he's going to keep that up. So I don't know. I don't think he's going to trade him.
So so you have a pretty good feeling about about Blackwood's sort of future.
I think that's a bigger question, because the Sharks have to actually turn it around and be good enough for it to really matter. But I do think he's a good goaltender. Like I thought he was a way worse goaltender last year, and that could just be, again, goaltenders are like a little bit inconsistent, and a lot of it depends on the team and the environment they're playing in. and I think he fits right now.
So here's
I
the
am
big question
optimistic.
then. Do you think that there's a pretty good chance that Mackenzie Blackwood will be the Sharks starter the next time they make the playoffs? Let's say that's 4 or 5 years from now. Do you think there's a decent chance of that? I'm just asking. I'm just curious what you think of that. I don't have an
No.
answer for that. No? Okay. Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think it's too far ahead, and
Okay.
also, there's just so many things I could go. I'm going to take the field versus Mackenzie Blackwood. I think there's still like a small chance, probably 10-20%, something like that. But
and
the
that's
field is
basically
a
what
lot
I'm doing
bigger.
too in terms of trade him while his value is high. I'm taking the field.
Sure.
So yeah,
that's fair. All right, let's move on to our last small topic, kind of like a mini mailbag questionnaire. I went to a Bruins game. I went to a Sharks versus Bruins game in Boston.
Clarify that.
I live in New England, so I go to a fair amount of Bruins games, as well as Providence Bruins games and the AHL. But whenever the Sharks come, I try and catch their game because I love the Sharks.
Yeah,
it's always like, people asked a lot of this on Twitter, was like, how shitty are Bruins fans, et cetera, et cetera. I have no problem with Bruins fans. I think they're fine. I think they were shittier when I was in San Jose and they were in the stands in San Jose. I saw a lot of like obnoxious Bruins fans being assholes. But in Boston, they're fine. Like, they were really nice to me. They like commented on my jersey. Like there was a Bruins fans couple behind us that like they wanted their picture taken to like right behind the benches to see the ice and stuff. We took their picture. They took mine and my partner's picture. They were really nice, and they always are. There's some questions. They actually have upgraded the food this year. Somebody had questions about food. It's a little bit better. They have some strange looking pizzas that look like weird triangles, not like the normal shaped triangle like a pizza.
Yeah.
How do you do it? How do you do pizza? It's like a weird. It's a very long triangle. Anyway, it's very strange. But we had some hockey questions, so we're gonna bring those up here. First one is from Just Dan on Twitter. He asked specifically about Calen Addison, like what's good, what's bad, and it's different than what we expected when he was acquired. And he had a pretty low acquisition cost. It was a 5th round pick.
Very low, yep.
5th round and Nebraska. But he kind of fits. I have a few thoughts. Chang, do you have any thoughts on Calen Addison so far?
Sure. Before I get to that, though, I did want to say first that so we're going to talk just to let you guys know what you're in for here. We're going to talk about Calen Addison. We have a question about William Eklund, Justin Bailey, Zetterlund, and a couple about Zetterlund. And yeah, I think so. I think that will round out the questions or the guys we're gonna talk about.
Couldn't cover everybody's, but I'll answer later on Twitter, maybe.
And also too, I had a thought about the fans too, that I would actually suspect that fans that travel are worse because they're the ones that spend more money, are more passionate, maybe more entitled, to be honest. And so those are the ones that to watch out for. That'd be sort of my guess. They're the more obnoxious ones, the more
when the Sharks are good again, I'm going to be a major asshole in the stands here. When the Sharks are good again. No, I'm kidding.
But on Dan's question about Addison, we've talked a lot about it, and I think that Calen has played a better game recently, but there are a lot of good. There's a lot of good offensively, and there's a lot of not great defensively. Actually, we saw in the Boston game, which you probably get to, right? That he was really poorly positioned for, I believe it was the Brusco, and just you see that where it just sort of, I don't know, it's attention or something, or just not sure why he's there when he should be somewhere else, kind of. And it happens enough where I would call it a problem. It's something to work on. And there is a reason why, again, that the acquisition cost was low. Things like that were just sort of, I don't know if he drifts, maybe, I'm not really sure. But yeah, it seems like he's kind of drifting. He's just not engaged with where he's supposed to be on the ice, kind of. A couple times too, just over aggressive. I'm not sure which game. It was in my notes. It could have been a New Jersey game, or it could have been the Boston game too. But just a little bit, and it's going to happen. He's more offensive guy, so he's going to take some chances with his pinches and get lost a little bit. But I think it was yesterday's game. where Hurdle had a chance, and it was kind of a shot from a distance. It missed, and then Addison was pinching from the get go, and so basically 4 Sharks got caught down low, and then it was a 3-on-1 the other way for the Devils. I think it was the beginning of the third period. I could be conflating, mixing plays up. That could have been someone else that I ID'd for that, but that's kind of stuff that sounds like it does creep into his game a bit. On the good side, though, obviously he can move a puck. Sure. He his passes are rarely not tape to tape. They're usually tape to tape, and also he can make some very difficult passes too. He's usually pretty calm on the power play. Not perfect on there. Obviously, that 5-on-3 against the Bruins was horrific, and he was a part of really it. He's got to as I think as the quarterback, sometimes you just got to take the bull by the horns and say, I'm going to shoot it. I'm going to find it, because you're usually in the middle, in the middle of the 5-on-3. And so you got to just take it on yourself to just kind of go for it. And so, yeah, so I think that, I think he can work on that assertiveness offensively too, which makes sense for a younger player. But he has shown enough, I would say, that there's a chance that he might be around for the Sharks the next couple of years. And if we can iron out some of these deficiencies that we mentioned, that he's going to be any good. But I think he's been about what's expected, though. I mean, what I was told when the Sharks traded for him, outside scouts from outside the Sharks, good offensively, bad defensively, and I think that's been about accurate.
Yeah, he's come as built, I think. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. It seems like he's the Ryan Merkley that is able to play in the NHL, and it's true.
He's a good Ryan Merkley, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's obviously as creative, I guess, but he's at least passable most times to play in the NHL. I think his physicality is very poor. Like I've continually seen, he's not strong on the puck, on the boards. He gets knocked off of it really easily. When he gets checked like a mile. Like he flies. Like the dude is not big, and he has the build of a skilled winger rather than a defenseman, even even a puck mover defenseman.
I would say though he could make up for it with better positioning, but that's not always there too. Yeah.
Yeah. He his positioning is not great either to stop 2-on-1s or cover guys. He gets a little I think what you're saying, drifting, he gets puck focused and then kind of just goes towards the puck carrier and forgets.
Normal for a young player.
Yeah. So those obviously all the bad parts of his game. Some of those can or cannot be ironed out at this point. He's 24, 25.
I think he's 23. He's a bit younger. He's 2018 pick, so he should be a little younger now.
Am I conflating people?
Yeah, Knyzhov's 25.
Calen Addison's 23. Yeah, you're right. I for some reason think he was 25. Yeah, Knyzhov's 25. That's why it was on the brain. But some of it can be changed. Some probably can't be at this point. But I think you're right. The good part, he's a great passer. He can run a pass-heavy power play. His shot is not amazing for a power play quarterback either, is the issue. I think that
maybe is why he didn't take the reins on that 5-on-3.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of strength to his shot, which is not something that you want from your guy that's going to lead you on the umbrella. But I don't know. He was a good acquisition, and I'm not mad about it because the Sharks missed somebody like him, especially with Benning.
Wear that beanie for a little bit. Wear that beanie for Calen.
Not mad about it. I'm fine. That's kind of the answer. Not any really different than what we expected, but I liked him. I think he was fine on that game. I watched him pretty specifically just because of that question. And yeah, that's kind of what I came away with. Physicality's not great. Good passer. Great. A couple ones that I was like, wow, that's a tape-to-tape pass. That's very crisp, but that's about it. All right. I can never say this person's name, but he follows me on Twitter, or they follow me on Twitter. Lakshya Jain.
I think it's Lakshya because
Lakshya.
I'm pretty sure I have met Lakshya. Sorry, yeah, Lakshya actually used to be a colleague at Fear to Fin when I wrote there a long time ago, and I've met Lakshya between periods before too. It's been a few years, but hello, Lakshya.
Yeah, Lakshya follows and likes a bunch of stuff and comments on everything. So thank you for doing that, and obviously for watching the show. But basically asked, here's something I've been curious about. What's the biggest change in William Eklund's game over the last month, and how's his play along the boards? I think for a young guy, there comes a point in the season where you kind of start to go through the motions a little bit, and like it's on a coach to kind of like get you out of that thing. And I think some of that might be happening with Eklund the past week or two,
Sure.
or a couple
Last
weeks. Is
couple,
that he's
been benched
yeah.
here and there, demoted here and there,
So I think that could be happening a little bit with Eklund. He doesn't have the same kind of like spark or offensive flair as consistently the past couple weeks.
It's a long season.
Long season.
Yeah, young player. Yeah.
So I think that's what's maybe going on with him in the past couple. His play along the boards, fine. I think he's pretty sneaky, even though he's not too big. He's always been like he gets good leverage on pucks, and he gets underneath players pretty well. And he showed, especially earlier in the year, that he was able to like bounce off of checks pretty good and not get bogged down so heavily. I don't know. Eklund's still a work in progress, but I think he's doing fine. He's doing what he needs to be doing right now. Just inconsistent games sometimes.
Yeah. I think for me, specifically on the boards question, when thinking about that, I agree that when he can fill the check on him, he does a pretty good job of holding on to the puck, and he's strong with that. I think that he needs to work on sometimes, though, the sort of the when to live to fight another day, to recognize that moment, because sometimes he gets absolutely erased and he loses the puck, and you can't do that. You have to you have to, in those situations that you're not going to win the puck, you're not going to keep it, that's fine, but you got to get the puck forward. You can't just flat out lose it. And so he's got to, I think he's got to work on sort of the speed of the NHL to some degree in those moments, because those are moments that he's not going to win physically. Obviously, he never will. He's not going to gain enough strength that if a 6'4", 230-pound defenseman has anticipated whatever he's doing, right, and that happens from time to time. Sometimes it's not even his fault. It's a bad pass, or the puck gets him too slow. But he's got to do a better job of sort of not flat out losing those situations, right? Even if he's not going to win it. And so I think that does happen with him a bit. So basically a little bit of playing faster, I think, there kind of, and recognizing the moment a bit. In terms of the change over the last month, I agree. This right now isn't the very best stretch of hockey that he's played. Probably the best stretch was maybe the first few games with Hertl. And I do think that he having Hertl does help a lot, because Hertl helps with sort of the board stuff, the down low stuff. And I will say that again, I don't want to take away, like I mentioned with Eklund, that once, like, if he can fill the check on him, like he has some time, then he can hold off stronger defenders. And I had an article recently. Eklund is second on the Sharks in terms of puck possession in the offensive zone, just holding on to the puck, just pure possession time. Just pure having the puck on his stick time. Obviously, number one is Hertl. And so I think it definitely benefits Eklund when he's not necessarily the guy for that on the line. But if he can be the secondary guy on the line, that helps him, because Hertl obviously commands a lot of attention down low and that sort of thing. I think one thing we have seen, though, and we've talked about it a bit, and that one-timer of his is a legitimate weapon. We've seen him absolutely blow goalies away. And I'm not saying, I think someone in my comments a couple weeks ago was saying like, oh, you got to highlight it, he can be like the Ovechkin on the Sharks. Hold on, slow down. So we're not talking about that. But it's a legitimate weapon, which it definitely was not 2 years ago. There was no shot weapon from him. It was like Addison, just get it on net, when he was shooting, when he was a 19-year-old trying to make it on the Sharks. And so there's something there. And it still needs to be refined. I think that his other arsenal of shots, beside that, the one-timer, still needs work. But that has happened is very promising. And if you can add other improve his shot and other types of shots to his arsenal, like a better wrist shot, that sort of thing, right? Then he'll be even more dangerous, because then teams can't guess what he's gonna do. And so if teams can't guess what he's gonna do, then he's going to be that much more dangerous. And right now, I think he's still a little pass heavy, so teams can guess that and play that. But I think it's very promising that that the shot is becoming a weapon, and it has to get better. It's not there yet, but it's getting better.
Yeah, that's a really good point. 2 years ago when he was in Sweden, shot was very poor. I think he had that one goal for an entire season in Sweden after he was drafted. And the next year after that, it was something that I wrote.
You did a story about it last year. He was working on it with the Barracuda.
Specifically mentioned like to him that he needed to get more shots on net. He needed to work on it, and he has. Like, you're right. Like, the one-timer is really what's come around. His wrist shot, his mid-range shot is not good up to like an NHL standard just yet, but he's also net front is pretty good. Like, he's actually able to like battle for pucks.
Yeah, stronger, obviously. Yep.
Yeah, so he's getting goals the way he can right now, and I like that kind of evolution. Eklund's kind of he changes a lot. His game like evolves, and I just really like that. He
works hard at it. Yeah.
There's no very coachable guy.
Very self motivated too. We talk about he's a stoic, and I don't think that's inaccurate. He is a guy that I think is self motivated. That is a guy that even if the locker room isn't bad, but if it were bad, he's the guy that might be okay and just is able to kind of, I'm going to improve. I'm going to be in my own space, and kind of maybe a little bit like actually currently on the Sharks, like a Sturm. It's not, that's kind of seems like an unlikely comp, Eklund and Sturm, but I actually think mentally, just sort of mentality, their focus is not that dissimilar. Yeah. So,
all right. Next question comes from, thank you for the question, Lakshya. Next question comes from S. Pawn.
Hey, Scott.
Says, does Justin Bailey do enough to stay on the team? And we didn't mention this in the signing bit because we were going to mention him here, but Justin Bailey got signed to an NHL deal while we were away from his amateur contract with the Barracuda.
Not amateur, just a contract with the Barracuda, professional contract with the Barracuda.
The Amateur Hockey League contract. Yes, the professional contract with the
We're never going to have an AHL player on this podcast again if you call the AHL the Amateur Hockey League.
Well, the problem is because they call it PTOs when they try out for the NHL, and they call it ATOs when they're trying out for like amateur tryouts when they're trying out for the AHL. So,
yeah, but he has a contract with the Barracuda, so that's different. He's a pro player, so yeah.
Yeah, he has an AHL contract. Yeah. Anyway, he now has an NHL contract, and he's been playing with the Sharks. Does he stay 3 games? Does he do enough to stay on the team? He had a really good first game. I remember that. Like, didn't he have a point in that game as well?
Yeah, he did. He had the assist on the game-winning goal, the Cunningham goal.
He looked good.
He was pretty good against New Jersey too.
Yeah, I haven't not been able to watch the New Jersey game yet, so that's not been. I haven't been able to see it, but
it's a good.
He was a little invisible in the Boston game, but
the whole team was, right.
Yeah, I don't know. He is your fourth liner, big guy, hits good, forechecks well, skates well for his size too. Yeah. I think because the Sharks don't have enough offensive players that they want to use, like they don't want to call up the Bordelos and the Gushchins to have them play full stretches with the Sharks right now.
Right.
I think that he's going to stay for a while. Just because they don't have a lot of options on their forward depth, and he's been fine.
Yeah, and my question actually, I asked Quinn this after the Vancouver game. The Washington game. After the Washington game, I asked Quinn the next day what took so long. Because, we saw in the preseason, he stood out, and he stood out with attributes that are transferable, not just Gushin scored a hat trick in a preseason. That's not transferable because he's not going to have that time and space in the NHL and regular season action. And we've seen that when Gushin has been up. But Bailey's speed, size, and scouts tell me he competes. So those three elements, those are all things that transfer directly to the NHL. And so I saw that, and I've asked a number of people over the last couple. I kind of tapered off with that when he got sent to the Barracuda. But during the exhibition, I asked a couple people, like, why hasn't this guy stuck? And I haven't really received a great even the guys I've talked to who should know, they're like, I don't really know. Because you look at him again and speed, size, and he competes. And also too, he seems to have one thing I thought was he's a guy that maybe didn't know his role because he is a big time scorer in the AHL, and guys like that can sometimes have trouble going to NHL because they're not going to be top 6 guys. But so far, he's looked pretty good at a pretty simple role in the NHL. As sort of a third line might be a little high for him, but he's doing an okay job with that and just going on a forecheck, claiming, getting the puck back, and then making some plays, cycling it, and on occasion, like the pass to Cunnin on a power play, actually, no less, making a play if there's time and space. And he's done all that. If you go back to yesterday, the second McDonald goal, Bailey was a big part of that, just on the forecheck, and he made actually before McDonald scored, I think, a deflection. Bailey made a pretty good pass to McDonald for a one-timer right in front of the net, and McDonald got stuffed there, but it was a good pass, good awareness, and so anyway, I do think he should stick. I also want to give a shout out to our buddy Jason Demers, because I was talking with Jason like a month ago or so, right before he started appearing on Sharks Pregame Live, and he was like, "Yeah, watch out for Bailey. He's gonna get an NHL contract." And of course, Demers played with Bailey in Bakersfield last year. And of course, I had seen Bailey in the preseason, so I wasn't surprised too, because I actually asked Jason the same question. He didn't really have an answer too. Like, why
you asked
hasn't
me
he stuck?
too, like a month and a half ago, or maybe a month ago, like, who are the Sharks going to call up for whatever reason?
That could have been after I talked with Jason. So
maybe
I may have had some advanced info right there.
I'm not to toot my own horn, but I also said Bailey because watching him on the Barracuda, I was like,
he stands out, right? Yeah,
he stood out. Like, I was like, this guy is the one who seems the most. Like, I think Gushin was still there, and I was like, maybe Gushin, but I think maybe Bailey, just because he seemed the most NHL ready in terms of his game, and it fits. So
right.
Not to toot my own horn there, but I did mention him. He needed a contract though.
Gushin and Bordeleau. And actually, that's one thing Quinn said about the contract. Like, hey, NHL contracts, there's only 50 of them. Those are, you don't give those out lightly. And so that's maybe why we didn't give him a contract immediately after trading camp. Because I'm sure they saw the same things that we did. And they kind of obvious that they did, because they signed him to a Barracuda contract and they called him up pretty quick. But in terms of Bordeleau and Gushin, Bailey is better in the NHL right now. Bordeleau and Gushin, like we talked about, I think they're just surviving in the NHL. And shout out to Bordeleau. He's gone to wing in the AHL, and he's done a pretty good job of it. And I think that might be his path. We'll have to talk about it in some other podcasts, but that might be his pathway that's an easier pathway for him to make an NHL impact. And so he's doing a good job there, which he wasn't on the wing. He wasn't doing as good job of it last year. And so credit to him. But anyway, those guys would just be surviving in NHL and not getting a lot of puck touches and the few puck touches that they do get, Gushin and Bordeleau, they got to do something with it. They don't, then they don't play, or they don't play as much, and that's just tough for a young player. Whereas Bailey's 28. Obviously with the Barracuda, he gets a lot of puck touches. He's on a power play, but in NHL, he's fine. He's fine changing his role and being a different guy, and he's done a pretty good job of it, I think. And so I would predict, even with the Sharks get healthier, that there's a good chance that he could still stick as a fourth line type. And he's done, like I said, overall he's been perfect. I've seen a couple of defensive things. coverage things, that sort of thing, right? There's reasons why, of course, why a guy 28 doesn't stick to the NHL with his obvious attributes. So I will say on his behalf, he's mentioned that last couple of years he's had a couple of shoulder injuries, one on each shoulder the last 2 years. So that's probably a part of the last 2 years. So he's not a perfect player by any means, but I think that he is more than good enough for this Sharks team.
I don't remember if we were talking about it or I listened to an interview. Somebody was talking about how, this is way off topic, but how Patrick Marleau would skate so effortlessly and he would go so fast, and everybody would be just like, how does this guy operate at this speed?
Oh, wow. We're at that portion of the podcast. You're comparing Justin Bailey to Patrick Marleau?
No. Bailey's the opposite. Bailey, no. Bailey's the opposite. His stride is not pretty. It's he looks like he's kind of chugging to move. Like if you watch his feet, but he moves really quickly.
He's so big. He covers so much ground, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the opposite of Marleau. That's just I don't know why I'm ranting on this, but just watching because I watched him during the game. I was like, oh yeah, he does he's fast, he's big, but he just kind of chop along the ice a little bit. But all right, we're gonna move on. We have two questions.
Let's finish up here.
We're going to finish up because it's a long episode here. But we have two questions about Zetterlund. One from MattyD and one from Chris Lindsey. Hey, Matty. Hey, Chris. One, MattyD asked, who is Zetterlund's comparable? And Chris Lindsey asked, a focus on Zetterlund's play. He's been fantastic. Would love a deeper look at his overall play. Comparable is interesting. I picked Tyler Kennedy. If anybody from Sharks fans from like 10 years ago remembers Tyler Kennedy. He was better not as a Shark than he was as a Shark, but he was a very good, like, mostly third, third line player for Penguins for a while. Shoot first kind of guy, great forechecker, good energy, decent speed, bad hands. Kind of fits to Zetterlund. Zetterlund's got a little bit more meat on his bones. He's the sweetest meatball, as we know.
The bench press.
Yes, the bench press. Than Tyler Kennedy ever did. But in terms of their like play style, kind of similar. I think just Zetterlund's a little bit more of a heavy hitter than Kennedy was. But I like him. He's really growing on me for a young player that has struggled so much last year, as we've mentioned repeatedly. I like him. And I'm really happy with him in the trade.
Yeah, I'm gonna tease. I have an article about Zetterlund coming out soon. All about actually Chris's question about just the deeper look at his overall play. The one thing that I keep pointing out, and you look at the notes, and I'm gonna pull up the clips for the story, but always from the beginning of the season, chooses to take the body instead of the puck. And Zetterlund is a strong guy, so that makes a difference. And it's so refreshing to watch this compared to early in the season where Sharks all over the place were just reaching for the puck, alligator arming in, trying to win the puck with one arm or whatever, right? Zetterlund consistently, and this is why he's risen from the fourth line to, well, now the second line, but he was up on the first line for a while too. But that's the reason why he's risen up the depth chart. And in the end, does he end up being a first, second line player for a playoff Sharks team? Not likely, but he is a good player, and that's the one thing that I guess that I've seen consistently over and over again, and that look for that when the puck is in the area, and it's a 50-50-ish, right? He doesn't alligator arm reach for it. He uses the body to go through people, and he takes some. If he doesn't win the puck that way, he takes the player out of the play. The guy he's battling with, and that allows his teammate to pick it up. So I really like him using his, like you mentioned, he's stronger. So I like that he uses that asset consistently. And again, this has been a day one thing. It's not something that David Quinn had to tell him, because David Quinn has talked a lot about that funny phrase, catching flesh, right? That's been a problem with the Sharks all season. But it's not been a problem with Zetterlund, again, from day one. In terms of Matty's question, in terms of a good comp, I was lazy, so I didn't think about it myself, but I reached out to a scout because I was just curious what they would say, and he gave a pretty interesting one. He said Mason Appleton, and I like that in terms of sort of that's maybe where Zetterlund kind of tops out in terms of his production and where he plays. Appleton's about a 15, 16 minute a minute a night guy. He's just going to be very solid on your third line. He won't look bad on a PP2 for a good team. He won't look bad on a PK. He may not be your favorite guy for those roles, but he's basically kind of a Swiss Army knife kind of guy. And so, I don't think that people should get too excited about Zetterlund, even though he has more goals. We make a joke, more goals than Timo Meier, or maybe he's tied with Timo or stuff like that, right?
He's got more.
He's got more. And also too, he leads the Sharks in shot attempts and quality chances, which sounds very Timo-like, but no, he's not going to be. That's not his ceiling. Yeah, but he's a very good player, and like I said, what I like about him is that he's playing within himself. So he's doing the best that he can. And on this Sharks team, that's made him a second line, first line winger. On a better team, that's not going to be him. But if he keeps playing within himself, he's going to find a role on a good team, on a bad team. David Quinn said yesterday, and I actually, there's the obvious sarcastic remarks, but David Quinn said that him and Ohotiak, these are guys who are going to be successful in the playoffs. And of course, the answer is, well, when Zetterlund's 33, or you got to make the playoffs first, dummy, stuff like that. So there's the easy sarcastic responses, but I agree with Quinn here, though, that these are the kind of guys that are playoff kind of guys. And when they hit their prime, when they still need to, they're both still young players, but they play the kind of style that should see them be a working, contributing member of a playoff team.
I like him, the Swedish meatball. I think you're right. He's not ever going to be as valuable as Timo Meier, but the trade doesn't hurt so bad when you have good players like Zetterlund and Mukabadulin playing.
Ohotiak and MattyD possibly too, right? Yeah. And Musty whatever pick they get this year. Yeah.
It doesn't look so bad.
Nope.
And also the Sharks, I think Curtis put out an article like why it was recently about what the Sharks would look like if they did give Timo like $9 million this year. Like,
it never made sense. Yeah, it doesn't make a point. Yeah, it doesn't make that doesn't make sense. But yeah, if you look at even that trade now, right? I mean, obviously there was a lot of pieces that moved, and so I think it ended up being like a 6-for-7 trade or 5-for-6, right? Because a lot of pieces got swapped, right? But you look at the New Jersey end of it. I mean, it's Timo, and it's maybe I've heard some good things about Hadaka. I don't believe he's played for them, but he's a decent-ish prospect or okay. But besides that, though, yeah, like there's a lot of guys that have gone by the wayside. Scott Harrington, Zachary Amon, Timur Ibrahimov. And then for the Sharks, though, obviously you have Johansson that didn't do much, but everybody else looks like they could be legitimate NHL contributors on a decent Sharks team. Again, no stars there. Maybe MattyD will be, maybe Mukmadulin, but you get 4 possible NHL, like real NHL players, solid NHL players. That's not bad for a rebuild, even if you let go of the best player in the deal.
Yeah. All right, Sheng. This has been a long episode, mostly focused on specific players. So
never intended to be this long, guys.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you appreciate the overtime. So
we'll see what we do next week. It's been a good return, I think, though. I'm happy to be back. I think it's something that I didn't realize until we came back I was missing. I was like, I don't talk enough hockey with people, I think. Except for all the Twitter talk, I think.
Except when you go to Bruins games.
Except for when I go to the Bruins games and talk hockey with the Bruins fans and eat their weird pizza.
Yeah.
It was good, by the way. It was weird, but good. So, all right, guys. Anything else, Sheng, before we get out of here?
I just want to thank everybody again for the support over the last couple of weeks. I also showed my wife all the support on Twitter, who shockingly can still be a positive place from time to time. And I showed her that, I think that was meaningful to her. And so thank you guys for all that.
Thanks, guys. Hope you have a good week. Bye.